Welcome to Trail Buddy. Today we're going to continue our resto mod build. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go over all of our parts and pieces. We're going to figure out what we're going to keep, what we're going to throw away, and what we're going to replace them with. But first, we're going to finish our disassembly. We've got a couple light little pieces to do yet. And we're going to do our power washing. We're going to clean up and degrease all of our parts. And we're going to make sure that they are in fact good. And then we're also going to go over the thread locations you got to look out for and different parts and pieces you need to check out. So our particular case is we're going to try to keep this paint as good as we can. So I think it'll look cool to have it. It's only original once, right? And if you're doing restorations doesn't mean like you got to totally strip the whole thing down, sandblast it, repaint everything. You can reuse the paint, and we're going to try to do our best to get this to look as good as we can, and we'll show you some of the steps that we use to do that. But we're going to go all over all of our parts and pieces. We're going to pull them out, and we're going to use them. And we're going to take them out and power wash them. We're going to use a big heavy-duty degreaser. And then that allows us to see a little bit more, see if we have any rust problems. I mean, we may have to paint it, but I hope not. And we'll go from there. So we'll start grabbing our parts and pieces, and we'll look and see what we have. So we've got our rear swing arm. So what you want to look out for this guy is what can happen is that snap ring on your rear hub can come loose, and the rear hub or the bearings can go out, and that rear hub can start moving, and it can scratch and dig up inside the swing arm. So this one here, we're clean and we're good. We've got no big digs. We're going to look at it. We're going to make sure it's straight, it's not bent. We're also going to look at these shock mounting tabs here. What we'll see sometimes is these will be bent, and or these threads here will be broken off. We're also going to want to check out our steering, or our, not steering, but our rear axle adjustment. Little tabs here. We're going to make sure that those aren't broken or bent, so we're good there. Another spot is these threaded holes here where your buddy pegs go, and or here your brake stay rod. So as your rear hub assembly here, you've got your hub that holds your shoes, and then there's a little rod that comes up here and mounts on this guy. So we're just going to make sure that that's not broken off, stripped, and we're going to make sure that, well, I can't quite see in here because it looks like there's a mud dauber nest that was in there. So we'll check those threads after the power wash. And lastly, which is extremely rare, is we're going to look at the bushings on our swing arm to make sure that the rubber's not rotted or broken or teared. And this one looks really clean. We'll do one double check after. But those are the things you need to look for on your swing arm. You always want to check that stuff out before you spend any money sandblasting. Sometimes you need to sandblast to see what you got, but it's good to check the key features before you put any money into a part that's no good. Another part that you want to check is your front end assembly. These are the units here that house your fork cartridges. Now you're going to want to check out your steering stem. You want to make sure that the threads aren't messed up on the top. You're also going to want to look at the lower part of the stem. We actually had one earlier today to where I guarantee that all those little ball bearings fell out on somebody, and it was dug in here, maybe 1/8 of an inch. It almost ate through this tube. So make sure that that's good. We're going to make sure that these aren't bent. We're going to go grab a straight edge. We're going to put them on each side, because what happens often, and you can almost always visually see it, is someone runs into something, and these longer tubes right here will take the brunt of that, and they'll be bent backwards. Or if someone endos the bike, flips it, I mean, these guys are really old, so anything could have happened throughout that lifetime. So we'll check this out. This looks good. Inside, we'll want to degrease that before we put our cartridges back in. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna try to keep this as nice as we can, the actual paint, so we don't wreck it. So that's our front fork. That's what you want to look for in that. We've got our rear shock. So on these guys, they're typically, these little covers here are usually pretty messed up. So I don't know what it is, but they really take the beating. So you've got the one on the exhaust side that's pretty protected, but then you got the one on the opposite of the exhaust that really seems to take a beating. And I would say that's probably this one. And you'll get rubbing. You know, we got like right here, where that's actually through the metal. But luckily, what you can do is you can turn this guy and put that towards the inside of the bike. So we don't see it again when we put it back together. So we can polish up this paint and make sure it's good. So we're gonna check our grommets either side. This one looks perfect. This one up on the top is really good, semi-questionable, but I think it'll pass. We're also going to make sure that these guys aren't bent. We want to make sure they don't lock up. There's not a lot of dampening left, but they're not bent. They cycle nicely. Check this one. This rubber grommet, we're probably going to want to try to replace that one. Lower one looks good. Tube is good. We'll cycle this one. Check this one. This one actually has damping. Not bad. And it didn't hang up. So like if it's bent, you go to push it down, sometimes it'll stick. You don't need to pull it back apart. That's how you know if that rear shock is bad. We'll also look at the lower casting, make sure it's not, this one's eaten up a little bit. Looks like maybe the chain got into that, but I think we can sand and Scotch-Brite that out when we try to get this back to the original Honda finish. Top is, there's just some pitting. I mean, we may take these apart just so we can get this eyelet off so we can really buff and polish that and then put it back together. We'll see how far we want to go. But these are good. The next things that we have, I know that our handlebars are all bent up. We've got our front brake shoe housing. So these pads look pretty good, but they are definitely original. And they are glazed over for sure. We even say Honda on them, and they got the HM. But on this guy, we want to make sure that there's nothing broken off inside here for our speedometer. All right, there should be a little, I don't know what you want to call it, a center spade or slot that your steering cable will mount over. And then inside there, there's also a gear. You want to make sure that turns freely. And this one's still packed with oil. There's also a rubber seal in here that we may replace. This one looks pretty good. It's just dirty. So this guy looks good. Also, we'll make sure that the little brake cable housing isn't cracked. Sometimes you'll run into these. These are cracked. This one I think is going to clean up really nice. It's not pitted at all. I think it's got a lot of grease and oil on it, and I think that's what saved it. So we'll probably end up replacing these shoes. So we've got this part we're going to clean. We've got our rear housing.
Before you keep going, do you want to do this for just the painted parts, or do you, and then, you know, as we go through and put the thing back together, we go through each of those little things? Because you'll be looking at that, and then you're like, okay, this needs to be replaced. We go and grab the part.
I think. Well, like, so if someone watches this is like assessing everything. Seeing what we got. So that way you can know, okay, these are the parts I need to start bird dogging. I need to start hunting for these while you're doing other things.
Well, then should we be doing that on just the parts that are hard to find? Because, like, you can replace that whole assembly like that. Like, it's just on the shelf. Whereas, like, your front hub, you can't. Or, like,
This rear one you can replace, but...
Yeah, so the rear one you can replace that whole thing.
Well, I wasn't going to spend... This one's pretty straightforward and easy. Yeah. Are you trying to cut time?
Well, so, like, the time and then also how long the video is going to be. Because, like, you know, if you go through every single piece...
No, I'm about done.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Good. Reset. And here we have our rear hub. This one looks pretty good. It's not pitted. Our brake stay, we'll probably repaint that. You also want to look at the splines and then cycle it. Everything looks good here, so we'll set this aside to clean. And why I'm doing this and what I'm doing, I'm checking out, is I'm going to try to identify all the parts and pieces that I need to start hunting for, that I know I can't use. I know that my front fender is good, but this bike didn't even come with a rear fender. I know I got to look for it. My handlebars, these are pretty much toast, at least the left side, so I've got to start finding that one. And my electric switch here, my dimmer, that is no more. So I'll have to find that one. Also, this bike did not come with some of the levers. We got to hunt some of that stuff. Now, we pulled out our foot peg assembly. We're just going to put this to the side because we cannot use this on our new 125cc engine because the transmission is too wide and cannot fit here. So as you were to bolt this on, it would either hit the left side, clutch side, or the right side of the stator side. So this guy is too narrow for the aftermarket motors. So this guy we're going to put aside, same with the motor. We already went through our seat. We know we can't use our engine guard. And we've got some of our chrome pieces here, which these we'll probably just throw in our degreaser or our parts washer cleaner and clean them up. These will clean up nice. And that's looks like it. Our top plate for our front fork assembly looks good. No cracks. And we do have some of our knobs. So now that we've kind of identified all the parts that we're going to keep, we can make our list of all the stuff that we need to find. And we'll make that list in another video, but right now we'll take all these parts and pieces, we'll bring them outside, we'll shoot them down with a good degreaser, and we'll start power washing and cleaning. And then we'll do the final little nitpicking of the parts and pieces of what we, kind of like the final overview of, okay, this one looked good, but it isn't good. And we'll find some of the stuff that's bad. So we'll head over to the power washer. Alright, now we got our frame and all of our parts and pieces that we're going to keep. We got them power washed, mostly degreased. I think what we're also going to have to do is we're going to have to take some of these smaller ones, bring them over to our parts washer, clean off all the heavy grease over here, especially where the sprocket and chain is. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the paint, how it's left. Our next step is we're going to pop this chrome strip off, because we got to get at that to, one, take this decal off and put the new one on. We're going to work on getting that grommet out. We're going to punch out our steering stem races because we're going to go with a tapered set. And just going to get these last few parts and pieces off the bike so we can get ready to either... I think what we're going to end up doing is we may try to sandblast some of this, or we may buy a rust stop sealer, spray that, tape the rest of the bike off, and spray this inside here, either like a black, so that way you can make this look good at least when you open up the seat and you look inside. The part you're going to see the most, unfortunately, is probably the most rusty here, which is by the seat latch, which I am really hoping these seat latch bolts do not break, because then we'll do an exercise or a video here on how to drill those out and do a helicoil. But one last thing you want to look at, let's say you're prepping this thing for paint, and where you're going to send it out, is just double check your steering stem stop. So often these are busted off, clean missing. And I've also seen cracks down over here by the motor. on the left or the right side. So you just want to look at those, make sure it's nothing you need to weld up before you send it out to get extra work done. So we'll work on removing those parts and we'll go from there. So since I'm so used to breaking these down, and what we do quite often is we get them sandblasted. So now I'm doing my best to make sure that I'm not prying against good paint. So I'm going to put this rag down underneath my little flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to use that as my little fulcrum to try to pop. There's little clips underneath here. Here it snap and let go. That's the clip letting go. And then it's inside the neck there, so there we go. So now these sometimes rust. You can see some of the original cover here. Chrome cover. This itself could probably clean up really well. I think Honda still makes these, so we can put our OEM Honda part back on. And then we've got our mouse written grommet. That is all chewed up. You can see all the little mice teeth marks on that guy. We've got our rear brake sensor that we're not going to use, because we're going to put one of the aftermarket 12 volt wire harness assemblies in here, so we won't need this. And it's frozen anyways, so we can't use it. We'll work now. I'm going to go grab a punch. I've got a piece of cold roll rod, about 1/2 inch in diameter, maybe, oh, here it is right here, a little over 1 foot long. And we're going to use this guy to tap these races out, so that way we can get ready to put the new tapered steering bearings in. So to do that, I'm going to go find myself a wood 2x4 or 4x4 that I can put underneath here that I can hit against. You're going to want a good solid surface, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this rod, let's say this is the ring, we're going to want to try to hit this ring and work our way around it and slowly tap that out so it doesn't bind. You can get inside there like that, tap it around. We're going to flip the bike over and then do the last one. So I'm going to go grab that 2x4 and we'll go from there. There we go. So what I was doing as this was in the bike, I was tapping this way a little bit, tapping this way, tapping this way, and tapping this way, and popping out that race. So when you put the tapered steering stem kit in that we have, it's very, very important to remember to take these out. Now again, too, don't get frustrated. This is something that you're learning. If this is something new, if you make mistakes, don't be afraid to give us a call or ask people online. I know sometimes you can get roasted online a little bit, but I mean, like, all of us had to learn this at some point. We don't all start out master builders, right? We gotta figure it out, and we gotta learn how to do it. Careful not to get the web of your hand on top of that and accidentally hit that. That's a bad day. I've done that before. Not a good day. All right, so we got those out. Got this. This looks good. Oh, and our spacer came with this. That's cool. We'll put that back in our fastener box. Again, it's really good practice to have one box that you put all your fasteners in. We'll go over how the heck to get this original speedometer out in a second, but I keep this nearby so that way every time I take something out I'm putting in. We even take these races and we'll put these back in here. We will not use that again. And after the first strip down, I am working my hardest to try to keep my work area clean so that way I'm not scratching any of my new stuff or the stuff that I'm working on. Got a hose from the battery, so that's scratched. I think the last last thing we got to do, which I'm dreading, before we're totally taken down, other than the decals, is this rear seat latch. It's really, really rusty, so I'm gonna put just a little bit more lube on these bolts, and I'm gonna try to get these loose. All right, here we go. I can't quite tell if I'm... Yep. Oh, it's actually coming loose. It's really difficult sometimes to feel if you're breaking off the head of the bolt, or if it's actually coming loose. Somebody put really, really long fasteners in here. That's like 3 times the length that it's supposed to be. Which doesn't help the situation because the threads on the backside are all rusted. Any day now. There we go. There's one. Into our box. Okay. Putting pressure down. And I'm slowly... There we go. I think we got it. Yeah, they're like twice as long as they need to be. All right, here we go. We're taking a little bike with it. So I think we'll be able to sandblast this guy. We'll just respray our silver, and then I think this will be good to put back on the bike, based on the bike that we're trying to make. Decent resto mod rider. I'm gonna take this flathead and I'm gonna chip off any rust that I see. Yeah, this is definitely seeing a lot of moisture up here. Who knows where could have been stored inside, outside. There's definitely was mice living in here. All right, we got her out without breaking any bolts off. So now the last thing we got to do before we start really stripping and sealing and painting this inside is our decals. So there's no real good method that I have found as of yet to take these off, other than just a lot of labor. You just gotta sit here and you can pick. The best thing you could do is try to work as slow as you absolutely can, so the decal itself doesn't tear. Now I know it's gonna break here because something wore through, but I'm gonna work my hardest because this old vinyl gets so brittle, and I think we're really lucky with this one because it didn't sit into the sun so much, because there's barely a sun fade line. In which also that sun attacks this vinyl, that UV ray. This is actually like crazy easy. This is not how it typically goes. at all with these decals. So there, I had to rip there. Got a little dinger here where it hit something. See if we can get that to come up with a decal. And this glue just smells awful. Oh, there we go. So you can see they're two-piece. There's like a foil back. And we are extremely lucky that these are coming off this nice. Typically, they're like baked into the paint. Like, we normally don't do this or will provide this service because what happens is this adhesive eats into that paint and it wants to pull the paint up with it. So you're going to want to try to not get tempted to use any metal tools. You can get away often using those plastic, I don't know, they sell them like a body tool, and they also have like plastic razor blades. That will help at least get, I have a little bit of nails, so I can get my nail under there, but you want to use real soft. Again, this is not typical, so this is extremely easy. So do not watch me and think like, why am I having such a hard time? This has to be the easiest decal I've ever taken off in my entire life on a mini trail. I'm working slow. Because what we'll end up using is like WD-40 or maybe some Gooby Gone to get rid of the actual adhesive that's on our paint. Because we are trying to save this paint. This right here is how it typically goes. You'll take like a 1/2 inch off and then pop, it'll rip, and then you're sitting here like this for hours. So try to bill somebody for that. No one would be happy about that. Alright, so we got that. Then we've got our side badges here, which are foil backed, the original. Now, if I was going to be repainting this, I would typically just get, there we go. I would just grab a screwdriver or like a little putty knife and I'd get right under there, because then I would not be worried about taking the paint off. But this one, there we go, portion of it. Another note, let's say it's a good idea when you're disassembling your project to take pictures along the way, so that way you have a reference to know what and or how it goes back together or where. Alright, so I won't bore you with the rest of this, but I'm going to work on this side of the decal. I pray that this one comes off as easy as the other side. I'm going to do the side badge. We still have our VIN tag on here. Our VIN number is real easy to read. And I think this is probably a good spot to stop for this one. And I think the next time we'll start going into some of the other parts and pieces. We'll work on that headlight bucket, the next one. I'll show you an easier way to do that. You kind of got to have like 4 hands to be able to press the little tabs that are inside here out. So we'll work on that on the next one. And we'll work on maybe buffing, or we'll lay it out. We'll also have to get an idea of what parts we need, and we'll start laying them all out. This is a good time too to start bird dogging and hunting parts that you're missing. So for this one, it's going to be very tough, but we are going to try to find an original headlight bucket in this color that we can reuse. It's going to be tough, but we're going to look for it. We're going to see if we can find it. So, till next time, you can find parts for this project on mytrailbuddy.com.